direction from you. The author that we were zooming in was unable to make it, and this is kind of classic stuff. She's a caregiver for her mom. Most women falls to women often, right? And so she was having trouble making the arrangements, but in addition, she fell a few days ago and is dealing with a concussion. So we were going to instead show a 30-minute documentary about the history of the ERA, which would do the same thing that she was going to do. But I'm sitting here feeling like you guys are already all fired up, and maybe you don't need to go through a half-an-hour documentary, and maybe I should just continue with giving you a high-level overview and then turning you loose.
Yeah.
So, yes? Anybody want to make anybody else mad and say, I really want to watch a documentary? Okay, so I will tell you, it's called Legalize Equality. You can buy it for like $7. We're going to ask you to invite us to your home and show it and ask us to see. But I'm going to go on then. I'm not going to do it. So Katie, thank you for being willing. As you've been saying here, ERA is not a women's rights amendment. It is a human rights amendment, or in other words, an equal rights amendment. That's a really important distinction. And according to a recent poll, 85% of Americans across party lines support the ERA. That's according to the Congressional Caucus for the ERA. And it says enshrining gender equality should be an urgent priority for any public official who cares about the women and girls they represent, our LGBTQ plus siblings, and our society as a whole. That's the video you opted not to see, just so you know. But I am going to take you through, in a nutshell, the history, because I think it's important for us to know, to be able to speak intelligently about it. So, the ERA, what was unusual is most amendments never have a deadline. When they are proposed and they go out to the states, there are never deadlines. There's only been a few. This one happened to have a 7-year deadline for people to get this passed in 38 states. When it did not happen, they gave us 3 more years, so it revved up again, but they were still unable to hit the 38 states that were needed. They fell 3 states short at the time. However, since 2017, 3 more states have passed it. So now it has reached the 3/4 states required. But 5 rescinded since 2016, rescinded its passage. That's never been allowed to happen before, by the way. The states tried to get out of the 14th Amendment and the 15th Amendment. It was not acceptable. It's okay for the states to do it, though, for the ERA. Yes?
How were they rescinded? Was it through the legislatures or a vote in the...
No, they didn't. The legislature revoked their
So they
support
had to pass it
of it.
from a vote, but then they could just rescind it through their legislature.
Yeah.
There's a problem there.
There's a problem. That could be the whole presentation, right? There's a problem here somewhere. Okay, so in March of 21, the House of Representatives revived it. And 193 members of the House voted against bringing it forward to the United States Senate. It still passed the House, but the Senate refused to hear it.
Does it need a 60?
And I need to remind you again what it says. Equality of rights shall not be denied because of sex. That's what we're fighting for. That's what we're arguing over.
But did it not pass the 60 vote margin? Was that
At the House of Representatives?
No, in the Senate.
No, the Senate refused to hear it.
Oh, so they wouldn't even bring it up. Okay.
Yeah, they didn't even bring it up.
Why?
I'll tell you why. Thank you. We're getting there. In March of 23, and I encourage you to go on YouTube and listen to the testimony in March of 23 when the Senate hearing was held after 33 years of it being blocked in the Senate. It has not been voted on still. And the same old arguments are being used against it. I need to be like an octopus up here with all this stuff on. So here are the arguments. Do you remember our friend up in the right-hand corner? Okay. I will tell you, if you haven't seen Mrs. America on Hulu, it's worth it. But Gloria Steinem's only concern with that, she didn't care that she was shown as sleeping with all these different men. What she cared about was that they blamed the defeat of the ERA on another woman, that it pitted women against women. But it was the big money that was being funneled into Phyllis Schlafly's moral majority that really defeated the ERA, especially from insurance companies, because they didn't want women to be high risk, right? Okay, so here are the arguments. They're the same, watch YouTube, they are the same arguments that there have been in the last century. They say it would allow abortion on demand. We know that's not true. But they are saying scary things like a 9-month pregnant woman could walk into a doctor's office and demand to have that fetus removed. It's not true. Unisex bathrooms, as I mentioned, this radical library has a do not tell Mike Pence there is a unisex bathroom here. Right. How many have a unisex bathroom in their house? You are the chronic activist. The military draft, women fought for the right to get into the armed forces, right? But that's still one of the arguments used against the ERA. They have upgraded, I think it's an upgrade, communism to socialism. So they have changed that a little bit. They've added the voodoo issue of trans rights to gay marriage. So it's not just gay marriage we're concerned about anymore, it's also trans rights. These last two, I think, are the two that upset me the most. And these are actual arguments. Women need protection, not liberty. And this is the most disturbing one. The conservative feminists who say, we're already equal. If you pass an equal rights amendment, it will say to everyone, they weren't equal before, but now they are. So what has thrown this out is the Dobbs decision, right? That made it really, really clear we are not equal. We do not have control over our own bodies. But that's a popular one among conservative feminists. But I want you to know none of these are mandated by an ERA. What would happen is it would be possible to contest your rights being denied if they were deemed in violation of an ERA. That doesn't mean lawsuits are going to go away. You know, we have laws against murdering people, and people are still murdered every day. So, you know, it won't stop the kinds of things that we are dealing with in lots of ways, but it would enable a woman who is facing that discrimination to bring it forward under an equal rights amendment. So there are also those, where am I? Okay. There are also those, no. There you go. So the federal ERA is a hot potato, and it has been forever, right? So there's disinformation and there are scare tactics, especially around bodily autonomy. Notice in the wording for the ERA, there is nothing about bodily autonomy. It just says equal rights will not be denied. The timeline, we talked about, the timeline that it was given, not only was it one of the few amendments that ever had a timeline, it was written in the preamble. The states didn't vote on the preamble, they only voted on the wording for the ERA. So it's not even part of what they voted on, and yet they are still insisting that the timeline ran out. We got one extension for 3 years. Why couldn't we have gotten another extension? But that was it. The rescissions, I mentioned to you before, that they're allowing these when they were not allowed before. But this is perhaps the most important thing for us to think about tonight. Who has the power to make this happen? This is where it's the hot potato. Some say the archivist can sign it and send it forward. It was forbidden by Trump and Attorney General Barr to do that. The archivist was forbidden to do it. However, President Biden has not reversed that. So can Congress ratify it? Biden has asked Congress to ratify it. Some say, again, that is the hot potato, just send it over there instead of having the archivist sign it and send it over. Can Biden issue an executive order? Those are some of the questions that the best legal minds in this country are debating. We don't necessarily know. That's why we are just kind of in limbo right now. But it is the reason that we are petitioning, and we do have a table over there with information on how to sign a petition to get this federal ERA, to get it passed, obviously, but at least get it in motion instead of ignoring the fact that we are sitting here without equal rights. There are those who say, can't we just start over? We know the political climate, certainly as far as women's rights go. We know that would be dangerous at best, probably. But I have Ruth's picture up there because people in the House who voted against the ERA in 2021, if you called them, and I did, the standard line was, I agree with Ruth Bader Ginsburg that we should just start over. Unfortunately, she gave an informal interview. It was not an opinion from the bench. It was not a legal opinion. She said something like, it is so messy. I just wish we could start over. And she is now being quoted as thinking we should just scrap it and start again. We know that if we tried to start over, even our grandchildren at this point would not have that opportunity. And the other thing I want to point out, sadly, I don't need to point it out to this group, but 2 of our Supreme Court justices have some pretty credible sexual harassment charges against them. So are they going to look favorably on a decision that would empower women, not to mention some credible sexual harassment charges that one of the front runners has in the presidential election?
One of them sexual assault, which is different from harassment.
Not to mention assault and rape, right? So dangerous time for us to be starting over, for sure, and doesn't really serve us well. So until there's this for all Americans, which is the wording for the ERA proposed 100 years ago, we must have this to protect New York State residents. This is the New York State version of the Equal Rights Amendment. You will see it is much, much more inclusive than the 24 words that Alice Paul had written. It includes race, color, ethnicity, national origin, disability, or sex, including pregnancy and pregnancy outcomes, sexual orientation, gender identity, and gender expression. 23 states have passed their own Equal Rights Amendment to protect residents of that state. Not all of them are this inclusive. In fact, it was kind of rare that it be this inclusive. And there's concern that this kind of extensive inclusivity is going to make it much harder to pass. I share that concern, I understand it, but I also know, coming fresh off of Martin Luther King weekend, there is, as I said about the chronic activists, there is intersectionality, right? So What affects one of us directly affects all of us indirectly. Another way to say that is oppression is oppression, no matter who it's leveled at, and none of us are free when one of us is chained. So, this New York State amendment is far from a sure thing. In fact, I've seen voting maps that are projected across the state, and it's a real uphill challenge. And here's why. 1/3 of our New York State legislature voted against even bringing it forward for you to vote on it. 1/3 voted against you having the right to vote on it. There is some resentment that women are grouped with minorities. Women are 51% plus of the population, but in this amendment, we are being grouped with minorities. The more inclusive, certainly the more opponents. We could look at it the other way, and I want to, that the more inclusive, the more supporters there will be. But it also will bring out some highly organized opponents, such as conservative religious organizations. And as Alice Paul said to us, women don't vote as a bloc. That was one of the things that really disappointed suffragists a great deal. And that's why the League of Women Voters was started in 1920, because they realized that women's vote, when they got the vote in 1920, they were going to be voting the way their husbands and their fathers and their sons were telling them to vote. So they were organized in 1920 to educate women to use the vote in their own best interest. But you see a lot of the women standing behind candidates who are very opposed to women's rights, and yet the women are cheering them on. So no group vote is a block, right? We are all individuals. We all make our own judgments based on what we believe. But we can't expect all women to support the Equal Rights Amendment. It just won't happen. My bigger concern is New York can do it, that's great, but it won't protect women in Texas or Florida or these states where they are being made into criminals for making decisions about their own body. So it's fraught with issues. I know that Barb Thomas brought some copies of the wording for the New York State amendment, and they're over there if you want to grab one of those. There are also information about how to sign the petition for the federal ERA. If we had a federal ERA, the New York State ERA would not be necessary. The Violence Against Women Act, which Congress votes on every 2 years, and a lot of members of Congress vote against the Violence Against Women Act. But that wouldn't be necessary. The ERA would cover it. Somebody was talking. Yes?
Question, why or how did the New York State one become so elaborate versus just using, what was the purpose of lumping all that together and making it harder?
Barb, do you want to try to
Yeah,
answer?
I think the purpose behind it was to really, the purpose behind it was to really make it inclusive, so that it included, not only women, but also, that it included the elderly, the disabled, the, people who, were not born in this country. And also, they wanted to define sex as being and including things like pregnancy and pregnancy outcomes and sexual orientation and sexual expression, and to put that into the law that sex includes those notions. So that, and there is some hope that if we get a federal ERA, that if a case were to go to the Supreme Court, that they might look at then those kinds of definitions that are in law not only in New York State, but other states are working on this.
Thank you. Barbara's part of the New York State Task Force that is working to get this passed, so she is an amazing resource. I would encourage you, I think it's www.signforera.com to sign it online. Somebody said something.
We have it back at the table.
Back there, yes.
Do the other states, you mentioned 23 other states have this, they're doing this. Are they expanded like the New York one? or-
They are not as inclusive.
Some of them
There's
are.
only a couple that are as inclusive. Yes.
The other ones are
Okay.
gender, though, the
Let's
other ones are
let
abortion.
Kristen Dart maybe answer something.
Sorry, Kristen Dart. I work at Planned Parenthood, so I'm in my Planned Parenthood hat. That was part of, the, working on bringing this and getting it passed. I'll just name that the other, amendments that are equal rights, considered to be ERA amendments, often are abortion only focused. And we really felt, that abortion, it obviously really needs to be codified, both the federal level and the state level, but that the discrimination that is rooted, especially around abortion, the gender identity pieces, are often all rooted in the same causes, which is misogyny and patriarchy, and so that is why those pieces came in. We also felt like it was really important that if we're opening up that section of the law and constitution, that we are being as inclusive as possible, because has been mentioned several times. Oppression is oppression, and I think part of the history that we did not want to repeat is that we've taken bites at the apple and gotten little pieces, but then that means that significant number of people have been left behind. And so if we're going to spend close to $20 million is what we project that this will cost, we should do it in a way that was going to cost that no matter how expansive or closed it was, that we should do it in a way that affects the most people and has the largest impact.
Thank you. So it's more for your money, kind of, right? It's a bargain. But that means our work is harder and extremely important because it is inclusive. Judy?
Hi, thanks so much for this. You mentioned the insurance opposition from insurance companies, which I know specifically is the health insurance companies, right? I think Jay was saying. Do we know the other sort of dark money and influence groups that are organizing?
Oh, no, there's no
this?
dark money. You silly goose.
I'm reading Sheldon Whitehouse's book.
Okay, don't read me.
Good reminder, there is funding. There's big funding coming in to oppose.
Do we know from what
Right.
organizations or what
So the
lobbies?
evangelists.
We can probably do a brainstorming and come up with them. Let me get to the last slide, because this is kind of our marching orders. I do encourage you to join our Women's Rights Awareness campaign. We are going to be doing presentations like this all over the place. We want to get into unsuspecting places like church pulpits, not just where there are believers. We want to really talk rationally about the journey that women have taken and the way they have been treated. So there are sign-ups, I think, at every table back there if you just want to give us your name and email and get involved with us. Please do sign the federal ERA petition and work to pass the New York State ERA. One of the most important things you can do is break the silence and start talking about this. Make some noise, get angry, and light a fire under other people. Host an ERA awareness event. Again, we would love to come to your houses. Thanksgiving dinner will be there. Just invite us for your neighborhood. Too late. All right. When do we come? The July 4th picnic. Yeah, where everybody has the American flags on. Invite us.
Is the purpose of that awareness or fundraising?
We are not doing fundraising
Okay, so that is strictly an
yet.
awareness.
I mean, we, right now our capital is information. So if you're afraid of fundraising, don't be afraid of this. If you love fundraising, yes, I know. Ellen?
So I can't help notice that the average age of this room is too old. So what is the group going to be doing to engage young people?
I have connected with 4 professors at Skidmore. They were on break when my stuff came through, but that's part of what we need to do, all of us. We need to get into high schools, we need to get into colleges. You know, there are several counties around us who do not have leagues, and so we are free to infiltrate there as well, to get the message out. Let me just go through this, and I love that you guys have your hands raised. I'll be right back to you. Read and educate yourself. The library culled some books back there for you to take and to read and to get you even more fired up. We also brought a bunch of free books for you to take. So you can see Mark Long back there. So if you want to know more, if you want to be even madder just before you fall asleep, take a book. Somebody mentioned this, I think, but monitor how your elected reps are voting. Call them after a vote and ask how they voted on certain, especially pro-ERA stuff. And, you know, it's one thing registering people to vote, it's another thing getting them to actually show up. And so the league is going to need help doing that as well. And I know there were at least 2 questions. I know, Andrew, you had one.
Thank you. I like the question about how there's no young people here. But I'm a numbers guy, and if you think about it numbers-wise, let's say on average the atomic family is 4, 1 daughter, 1 son. So we've all got on average 1 daughter, 1 son. Some of us might have grandchildren and great-grandchildren. So there's around about 100 people here tonight. You've got 2 each, so it's 200. You might have half of us might have 3 grandchildren, so that's 150. So from this meeting, just by influencing the people who respect and love us, we can have a huge influence. There's the start.
Thank you. Thank you. So I need to tell you, Andrew is a neighbor of mine. He is a brand new citizen. He had to pass a test, a citizenship test, that I don't think I could answer half the questions. So he's got that enthusiasm and optimism because he's a brand new citizen. So welcome to America, Andrew. Somebody else said Kathy.
That's why we need immigrants.
Yes.
United States that have passed legal right to marry, has that been challenged by the courts and Supreme Court orders on that path? Is that possible to do? You know, unfortunately, it might be, people might be thinking of it.
Yeah, I don't doubt that legal challenges are everywhere all the time. Do you have an answer to that? I think we should just assume yes. Yeah. Elizabeth?
Yeah, so I was just gonna say, my name's Elizabeth. So as far as getting young people out, we have a big opportunity, and that's gonna be voter registration. So when voter registration comes up, you're gonna hit those 17 to 18-year-olds. You're gonna let the 17-year-olds know that they can register to vote. Okay, that's really critical. When you go out to the sports, so especially if you're seeing like cross-country meets, you're going out there, you're getting people registered to vote, you're going up to the families, making sure everybody's registered to vote, and then talking about the ERA at the same time. So you're making sure that they're registered, that they know that it's important, and that they flip over the ballot that time. So it's gonna be fresh in their mind. So when you're thinking about like, how do I get out and talk about the ERA? Like, I'm just gonna go randomly talk to people. Use that voter registration as your buffer to get that conversation going. And then that's the easiest way to get those young folks out there.
Thank you. I carry voter registration forms in my car. I approach sales clerks in the convenience stores and ask them if they are registered. That's really great advice. Thank you.
The kids can register online, I mean, everybody.
Yes,
But I'm just
register
gonna
online.
I think
Yeah.
kids are gonna be inclined to register online, they don't wanna go.
So I registered, so they had a cross-country event, at Saratoga in the park, that's back that the league we did. And we went around to every single tent, and if you you got grandkids, I mean, I drug my daughter around, I was like, let's go. So you just go around and you tell them, you talk to the teachers, you say, hey, and they're like, oh, I was a social studies teacher, yeah, that's awesome, I'm glad, yeah. And the kids are excited, and the parents grab them out of my hand, like, nope, yeah, you're signing up, or give me another one, because they want something tangible. Yes, you can do it online, but, one person is better than no
Yes,
person.
and the League of Women Voters will have a very orchestrated process for getting voter registration out there. Janice?
You can register online. It's through the New York State Board of Elections website. They have a link to get to the online registration.
And Elizabeth said something really important. You have to turn over the ballot to vote on this. Some election inspectors will remind you to turn it over, some will not. So we have to also get word out about that, so thank
Sign up to
you.
be an election inspector too, poll inspector.
And
You
sign
get
up
people
to
turn the
be
ballot over.
that. Okay, well, you jumped ahead to the Q&A, thank you. So before I wrap this up, back to the younger people thing. We are having on March 9th at the Clifton Park Library, a debate on Barbie. So we're calling it Baffling Barbie. Is she a feminist friend or a feminist foe? If you feel strongly, let me know and you can be on the debate team. But we're gonna show clips and we're gonna have a fun discussion about what did Barbie contribute or what did she take away from the feminist movement. Any other questions before I wrap up? Yes?
About states that rescinded their votes in favor, how many states do you think are gonna?
5 states have rescinded it. I don't know that. She asked how many, about the states who rescinded it, what might they do? It should not be allowed. As I said, it was never allowed for any other amendment to rescind it. But we're a little more loosey-goosey on this one, right? Yeah, because it's just women, someone just said.
So the ERA coalition of 84 organizations just recently sent a letter to President Biden encouraging him to make the archivist publish the ERA. He wrote a letter back and said, that's Congress's job. Really? We can let him get away with that?
Yeah. That's the hot potato that I'm talking about. Nobody really wants to take responsibility.
Yeah, what are they? Okay, they are Nebraska, the states that rescinded are Nebraska in 73, Tennessee in 74, Idaho in 77, Kentucky in 78, South Dakota in 79, and North Dakota more recently voted to rescind in 2021.
Thank you. If you have friends in those areas, friends in those states, contact them, tell them not to let that happen.
But what I understand is that there is no process for rescinding. In other words, there is no precedent of any state being able to successfully rescind.
Right, that in itself is a process that should never have been allowed, and yet it happened. Who am I after here?
As unpopular as my dog money comment, but I'm in a room of experts. Isn't it true that you can only register online if you have a New York State ID, including a driver's license?
Driver's license or
Or some kind of non-driver ID.
So you submit it online?
Yeah, otherwise you just print it out and you mail it in. And pre-registration, you all know, is 16 and 17.
Right, 16 and 17 you can register at. Pat, did you have a question?
Yeah, I thought that our Senator Jill Brown was working on the federal ERA, trying to go through the legal aspects of it. Is there any way, are we working with her office, or is there any way to get involved with that?
I would encourage you all to contact her. She's again rolling something uphill here to get this happen.
Right.
Let her know that you, as a resident of the state, encourage and appreciate her support for that. And Susan's right, put pressure wherever you can do it. There is no, there's no hero in this, in the sense of a political party, right? They're it's a hot potato that nobody really wants to touch. And we've got to hold their feet to the fire. All right, so
Our task right now.
our task right now, thank you. This is done. Our task right now, sign the ERA, not right now, it's not right. Sign the ERA petition, either here or at home. Sign up to join our Women's Rights Awareness Campaign, which will be essentially doing presentations like this wherever we can get in. We educate ourselves about what the issues are, what the hot buttons are, and we're looking for people to serve on committees such as finding us locations that will have us speak, coming up with programs that we offer. I want to work with Leslie, who is Alice Paul, on doing a breakfast with Shirley Chisholm, because she was very involved with that, and in order to involve more people of color in this, because we all have skin in this game. So we're looking for people. We have a group that we're calling, what are we calling it? Like pop-up activities. So here we are at the mall, and all of a sudden we start singing I Am Woman, or a more updated version of that, but we're looking, we don't want this to be a drag. We want it to be fun, we want to appeal to the younger people, that's why we're doing the Barbie thing. It's really important that it not just be lectures, but that we really help people understand what's at stake and that we make it interesting. Yes?
Join the League of Women Voters.
Join the League of Women Voters, I want to say. Absolutely one of the things you can do, or join, become a member of Planned Parenthood, join the organizations that are working so hard on this and have for a very long time. So back to your question, what else can you do? Sign the petition, get involved either with the League or the Women's Rights Awareness Campaign is part of the League. Talk to people. And if you do sign up with us, we will let you know what the different committees are, and you can choose where you think you're strengthened. And remember, we need male allies. That is really, really important. I want to thank our reenactors. So they were come up here, Leslie, Linda, and Linda. You really, it's nothing like seeing these people who spent their whole lives
It was a really nice piece.
come back to us. Yeah. Here is a t-shirt for you. These t-shirts were designed by our own Kimberly Harvish. They are specifically, there's a little shout out to Gracie Slick on the front. Go ask Alice, I think she'll know. That is Alice Paul on the front. And the back is the wording for the Equal Rights Amendment, so people can see it is not that scary, right? So when you're standing in line at the grocery store, people are reading that. We were not allowed to sell them tonight, but we do have some. So, some in the parking lot now. But if you're interested in getting a t-shirt, you can, there's a sign-up sheet over there. And we're selling them for $24 in honor of 2024. So thank you so much for coming back to life.